Welcome to Against the Tide, the podcast where extraordinary social changemakers share their stories and their wisdom. Against the Tide is a celebration of courageous women who create lasting impact by daring to forge their own path. We'll dive deep into powerful themes such as the complexity of identity and how it influences the choices we make, embracing change even when it feels uncomfortable, and how breaking free from labels can unlock your true potential. Join me, Jo Metcalfe, to hear stories of incredible women who, by swimming against the tide, prove that extraordinary things can happen. Rimla, welcome to Against the Tide. You've built a remarkable career across sport, from representing Great Britain as part of the first Muslim women's futsal team, to leading the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation and becoming the first Muslim woman to sit on the FA Council. Today we're going to talk about identity, representation, leadership and challenging systems. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Shall we dive in?
Let's do this.
Excellent. So, starting with your early life, where did you grow up?
So I was born in North London, first generation born in the UK. So my parents are originally from Pakistan. They landed in North London after they got married, and I have two older brothers as well. So I was the third one, but we were all sort of based in North London and grew up in a very eventually multicultural community.
Excellent. So you've mentioned your two brothers there already.
Yeah.
How did that affect your relationship with sport?
Oh, massively. But I think not just them. I think when you are the only girl amongst three, and you're the youngest, you have this sort of sense of looking up to your older brothers and wanting to join them and not be left out. And they were very inclusive as brothers in the sense that they would always include me in whatever they were doing. But also, I think my journey with sports is not just down to them, although they'll claim a lot of the credit. Um, my mother and sort of generations prior to her were really into sports as well. So, mum was sort of sports president year after year at school and college before she came to the UK. Really encouraged me to play sports, to join my brothers when they were playing cricket in the back garden or football, in the front garden. And also her mother was into sports. So she was a basketball player. Her father was in hockey. So it's just generation to generation. It's in my blood, you could say. But that was always alongside sort of a professional career as well. So I kind of had encouragement, I would say, on both angles.
Fantastic. And how important was it that your mum supported you through your sports career?
Massive. I think, and this was the thing, I mean, I'm sure we'll get to talk about the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation, but this was the big thing I noticed about every single Muslim woman. And I don't think it's just for Muslim women, actually. I think it's for women, full stop. When you see your mother into sports, it really has an impact on you. Yes, your father and sort of playing with your father potentially, but when your mother is into sport, I think it has a massive impact. And so that constant encouragement, that constant, she's competitive as well. So we'd play tennis with her and we'd play badminton with her. And, there was never a sort of a taboo around sports for us growing up, including myself. And I think that plays a massive role in how you then view sports and how you view yourself within whatever sports that you choose for yourself.
Fantastic. So you've said previously that from your perspective, you never felt like you were swimming against the tide, even though others saw it that way. Why does that difference between internal and an external narrative come from?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think when you're in it, certainly me, I'm the youngest. I have two older brothers who've always encouraged me to push my own limits, as has my mother. And so I think I never saw myself as someone who would, nothing was ever too much. I think that's how I would say it. So looking back at it now, I can look at it and I can say, gosh, it was tough doing some of the things that I've done, particularly on the sports governance side of things. And I can see now, looking from the outside in, the battles that people sometimes talk to me, about at that time. I didn't see it that way, but looking back at it now, I can see what they were talking about. But when I'm in there, I'm just determined. I think part of it is a determination to make a difference, to make a change. But I think a lot of that grounding also comes from my faith. So as a Muslim, there's this sense of, um, whatever's meant to be will be. It's that kind of, um, you could say, uh, way of looking at life, that you try, you endeavor, you do what you can do, to the best of your abilities, but you leave the result to God. That's the kind of, in the faith, that's a thing that my mom really instilled in us, that we do our best, but we don't fight internally or externally in a very negative way. We battle in positive ways. And so therefore I think at the time, maybe it was just kind of, look, if I'm meant to get to the outcome that I think is right, for society, then so be it. If it doesn't happen, there's a reason for that. It's not written right now, but there's something else that I might be able to do. So there was always a sort of a pivoting to, how do we get the outcomes that we're actually looking for? It might not be the specific thing that I think it is right now, because if it's not that, then something else will enable us to get to where we want to get to. And I think I would say that about my career as well. Even in sports, it was never something I planned. So it happened because doors were opened without me pushing on them. And I always believe and trust that the process, in terms of, we'll get to the outcomes that we need to get to. Just trust that process. And I think that comes from my faith, and certainly from my mother, and kind of what she's instilled in all of us.
That's fantastic. You mentioned your interesting career in there, and it's been
Yeah.
anything but linear, hasn't it?
Yeah.
From chemistry to PwC to sport, and now working for a family run business in Yorkshire, which is
Yes.
fantastic. What guided your decision making through that?
I've just, talked about it there in terms of, it's, as you say, it's been anything but linear, but it's always been opportunities presented to me. And, 9 times out of 10, those opportunities have been the right ones. And, I've ended up in the positions that I've been in. There have definitely been areas where I've been rejected as well. It's not like I've gotten every role that I thought I've wanted, but I've trusted the process, in terms of, if I've not got the role, there's a reason for that. But I think that career trajectory has just been me following my passions. When I was at school, I wanted to become a surgeon. So I didn't do that, but I was thinking about becoming a surgeon. Really loved medicine and, serving people. And that was something, again, my mum really, instilled in us from a very young age, was giving back to community, because that was in her heritage as well. So she was sort of passing that on into us. And so therefore surgeon was what I wanted to be. And then, being from the South Asian continent, medicine is something that a lot of South Asians kind of study, in the UK. And so my mum was, always wanting us to be different. So she didn't, when I told her I wanted to become a surgeon, she sort of turned around. Her reaction was, stop being so Asian, do something different. Which was very unlike South Asian parents at the time. You can always already get a sense of what my mom's like. So I, ended up, long story short, studying chemistry at university, because I wanted to go into drug research and sort of science that way. Um, and yeah, I had a fantastic time, but I realized the university I went to, they stick you in labs all day long, pretty much. So my friends were sort of in 2-3 hour lectures, a day maximum, and I was there 9 to 5 every single day. And realized that I hated labs, so that wasn't going to work. And my brother's an accountant, so I just thought, let me try that. So I went to PwC in the end, and it was fantastic. So, this sense of everything that happens for a reason. So when I joined PwC, I'd just come back from the futsal tournaments, where I was captain of the team. And it gave me a sense of responsibility, even more than previously. And so I felt like I wanted to do more to build a foundation of Muslim women in sport in the UK in particular. and becoming, being able to put together a strategy because of all this theory that I've learnt for that charity. It was a charity, eventually we registered it, but being able to put a strategy together for that charity, to then being asked to become chair of that charity, to run that strategy, to oversee that strategy, everything fell into place. So there I was at PwC working ridiculous hours, and at the same time doing all this work voluntarily on the side with the foundation. And it was fantastic. I look back at it and I think, how the heck did I do that? Two full-time jobs is basically what I was doing back then. And yeah, I guess I was having so much fun. There was a sisterhood and so much support for my family for doing what I was doing. But yeah, that's, this is how following the passion, following this sort of trajectory of things that are being put in front of you and deciding, is that for you? Is that something you want to do or not? That's basically what led me to all the other opportunities that came further down the line in sports governance.
Yeah, what an incredible journey. And I get this sense that faith and, can I say, sort of servant leadership is sort of a driver, and being open to things that are bigger than yourself. And that's come across a lot in our conversations, actually, that actually when you're working towards something that is not just yours, then it's quite empowering, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's also something that you can do for longer. I think oftentimes I see people, even in my time in the sports leadership space, other Muslim women and sort of just people from different backgrounds that have come in for different reasons, I guess. And the ones that I've seen that have lasted the longest and have made the biggest impact have been the ones that have done it not for themselves, but for the greater purpose, because they leave something. So even they know when the time is right for them to step away and for someone else to step in, because it's not about them. But they do what they need to do, the difference that they want to make, and then they leave it in a better place for that next generation or that next group of people to come in and to continue that.
And this sense, what I'm hearing as well is being open to things, opportunities start coming forward. How do you find that in terms of how you work?
Yeah, I definitely think trusting the process. If I look back now at that whole sort of journey over the last 20 years from when I became chair of the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation to now, it's not been a totally easy journey. There have been roles that I would absolutely love to take on, some that I've applied for, some that I haven't, like I say, that I've not gotten. But I've always trusted the process in terms of there's a reason for this, and I will end up being where I'm meant to be. But with the roles that I was able to take on, it was literally, like I say, me following my passion. And I think that there's so much that can be said for that. Not stressing too much, not getting too anxious about, getting the perfect role in this moment right here, right now. It will all reveal itself. Every single element of my career trajectory has led to the next, and it has built up.
So your entry into sports was with the Women's Islamic Games in 2001, which seems ages ago now, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Can you tell our listeners about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So it's the Women's Islamic Games was, because I don't think it's running anymore, unfortunately. It was a tournament that was held every 4 years, like the Olympics, all the sort of Olympic sports, endorsed by the IOC. And it was founded by a woman in Iran called Faiza Hashmi. Now, Faiza is the daughter of the ex-Iranian president Rafsanjani, and the founder of the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation. I'm not the founder. Everyone sort of thinks I am automatically, but the founder was a guy called Ahmed Versi, who's the editor of the Muslim News, and he was interviewing Faiza about her politics, obviously, but then she talked about this tournament, and Ahmed asked her, what about, because at that stage it was for Muslim women from Muslim majority countries. So it was the national teams of Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, etc. It's all these national teams from Muslim majority countries. And he said, what about Muslim women from minority communities within countries like Britain? And she sort of thought, oh, let me take that away. So she took it back to the committee that she had that was overseeing the games, and they sort of put this thing through to allow countries that are not Muslim majority countries to participate as long as the teams are Muslim athletes. The point being for her, she'd grown up in Tehran where she'd really been behind sort of women cycling in Tehran and really pushing women's sport in Iran. And that was part of this whole tournament, was Muslim women should get the opportunity to compete in an open environment, in a free environment for them. So for those that do cover, like myself, to be able to play without a hijab on, or to be able to do a swimming contest without having to be in a burkini that's going to give you loads of kind of friction and not being able to race at your best because of that. So she created a tournament that was in an all-female environment, so female officials, female coaches, players, everything was women. So she opened it up for Britain to take part. There had been 2 tournaments already. This was the 3rd one in 2001. And I was selected to be part of the futsal team, which was incredible. So futsal is this indoor version of football that is played in a smaller court. So I'd say it's about the size of a basketball court. And the ball is smaller, so it's the normal footballs that you see played in sort of, Premier League, World Cups, etc. They're a size 5, so they're slightly bigger to the size 4 that futsal plays, that you play futsal with. And it's a heavier ball as well. So actually what that means is, so that if you actually look at the balls that are played with in football in the Lionesses or the England men's team, etc., it's quite a light kind of moves in the air type of ball, whereas the futsal ball, you drop it, it won't bounce up. And what that means is a lot of the game is played on the surface rather than in the air. You're not going to header that ball. And so it really encourages you to use your feet, all aspects of your feet. It's a really skillful, fast-paced game. The rules are slightly different to football. I won't go into them, but there's a lot of differences. And what that means is a very basketball-esque football game going on, which is really good fun to be a part of. So we were in this tournament, first time ever in Iran, in Tehran. Having met all these women from Britain that played futsal or football, but were playing futsal with me, and I never even knew they existed because I was the only one that was playing sports that as a Muslim woman in my environment. So it was an incredible tournament to be a part of, incredible to be part of that sisterhood. And this tournament was just fantastic. We had, an Iranian team that we played against that was incredible. There are nowadays YouTube videos of them showing how incredible they are as a team. And they won the gold medal. Obviously we got thrashed, but they won the gold medal. We had a party with them, their gold medal party. They wanted to party with the Brits, and it was just a fantastic tournament, a sense of sisterhood. It enabled us to feel, at a time as a Muslim woman, as a Muslim full stop in Britain at that moment in time, it was really difficult. And there's all sorts of difficulties in our childhood due to racism and other types of discrimination. But this was the point, 2001, where Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hatred was growing massively. And so to be there with that British flag, waving the British flag, meant a lot. It was a statement. And then again in 2005, exactly the same sort of situation, in terms of being able to say I am British and Muslim. It was a special thing to be a part of.
Why is that representation so important?
Yeah, I think representation is so important. To see someone like yourself, that gives you the sense of being, I can do that too, right? Everyone knows that. It's a lot easier to see yourself. If you can see yourself in those positions, it's a lot easier for you to be able to dream about that and to be able to think that that's something that's achievable for me. I didn't have that. I didn't have, another Muslim woman, whether covering or not covering, just a Muslim woman or a South Asian woman that was in that space. I was lucky, I am lucky that I have the mother that I have that just encouraged me to push the boundaries and not care about the fact that someone like me might not be in that position. But the fact that I've been able to do that for other people, like the next generation of girls that have come to me and said, sorry, it's, to know that I've made a difference for them is just a wonderful thing, and I hope that they do that for that next generation. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I can see you light up when you talk about sport and the passion in your eyes. You can really see that. You've described working in sport as coming from a heart space, and I can definitely feel that now. What was it about that work that felt so important to you?
I think my personal journey in sport has been really influential in it ending up being at the core of who I am in terms of my professional life as well. I never envisaged me being able to play professionally in the same way that a lot of our, whether it's the Red Roses, the Lionesses, and so on. I never envisaged as a woman, forget every other angle to myself, just as a woman being able to play sport professionally in the way that it's now possible for women. But I certainly had a love for sport that was nurtured in me from a young age. But I think also, touched on earlier on some of the discrimination that we had to deal with as a family, as individuals, growing up. And it's never gone away. Like I say, it's shifted from racism to Islamophobia to anti-Muslim hatred. And that's sort of some of that intersectionality between all of those things as well. But the first part of my life, sort of the formative years, was really, like I say, about the racism that we had to deal with. And I was born in a home in North London in an area where we were the first non-white family to move in. So that whole sort of streets and area that we were in, we had this sort of, that typical field outside our home, no ball games allowed, but we still played them anyway. But that whole area around the fields and the streets adjacent, we were the first non-white family to move in. And what that meant was we bore the brunt of all the abuse, physical, in terms of damage to property. Thankfully, I was never physically hurt, but I think that had a large, my brothers had a large part to play in that in terms of their protection of me. But it was a lot to take, and then there was sport, where at primary school I was playing sports, obviously in PE lessons, and then a teacher would see that I was decent at something and would include me in a football team or a netball team or in the athletics team and so on. And here I felt that nobody cared about the colour of my skin. Nobody cared about the fact that I wear a piece of cloth at the end of the day around my head. All they cared about was my ability on the field of play, whatever the field of play was. And I happened to be good, so it worked. And I think that's where, therefore, I felt I was included and welcome. I mean, don't get me wrong. I look back at it now and I think in some ways I sort of convinced myself I was fully welcome and fully included. But looking back at it, there was a difference. I was different to everyone else. I would take part in secondary school teams and be there in a sweatshirt and tracksuit bottoms while everyone else is in a skirt and a vest top or whatever it might be, because the options that we have for sports in terms of modest sportswear wasn't available back then. So I had to adjust and I had to do these sort of things. So I was different from an external perspective, but also from an internal perspective. So at the time, I think I clung to sport because it felt like this is a safe place. Family was a safe space. That was a safe space. And so that passion, that love for sport continues to this day because of that. And I want it to be truly inclusive and truly a space where everyone can feel like they can thrive, without having to change who they are or elements of who they are because, somehow they're going to be rejected because of that element of who they are. I know that there are certain, I played county, I played regional, I played international in different sports. And there are certain sports where I know I was prevented from going further because of who I am in terms of my identity. For example, if you're a goalkeeper and you let in 3 goals versus 24 goals that the other goalkeeper lets in, and yet they still pick the other goalkeeper, those kind of things are really demoralizing at the time. But I can look back at it and say, I know why that happened, and it was nothing to do with me. So, yeah, look, there are some really, really positive experiences throughout sport. But the main thing was for me that it was in my head at the time, it felt like a level playing field, and it gave me a safe space. I think that's why I clung on to it so tightly.
Amazing. It's got such power, sport, hasn't
Yeah.
it, to really change lives. So, you described yourself, or what's coming across very strongly is that you're a change maker and you've impacted so many lives, and that's had a ripple effect over the years. At what point did you feel like, or do you feel like, a change maker?
I don't.
I
I
could
always
see you
struggle.
sort of slightly embarrassed with that.
I find it a little bit embarrassing. I guess if you look at the facts, yes, I get that I did make a difference. I can look at the career that I've had in sport and I think, clearly it's had an impact. People are telling me it's had an impact on them personally. So clearly, yes. But I do find it a little cringe when I think about sort of that kind of word being used for me. Look, like I said, I have just followed my passions, and I have tried to be as selfless as I can be. I mean, selfish in some ways, let's be honest, because I want those opportunities. I want to be in environments that are inclusive. So still selfish in some ways, but try to be as much for the community, which has been instilled in me from a young age from my mother. And so, yeah, I don't like to put titles on it. I just hope that I've made a difference for people, and I hope that they will do the same for that next generation that comes through. And actually, in my work, I see that it's not just about the next generation; it's also about the people that have come before me and the difference I've made for those people as well by doing what I'm doing. And I think that's just a natural part of being human, right? You pass it on, whichever direction it goes in, you pass it on. And that's something I hope that people, like I say, will continue to do in a world that increasingly feels individualistic and focused on the individual, and brands, personal brands, and so on. I really hope that people pay attention to the intention, right? So that in our faith, again, intention is the core of what everything is about. So actions are judged by intentions is a phrase that is used in the faith. So get your intention right, make it for the whole community, and you will not lose out. You will have the opportunity to make an incredible impact as well as benefit personally, whilst thinking about everyone.
Amazing. So you became the first Muslim woman, the first Asian woman, in fact, on the FA Council. How did that feel beyond the headline?
How did that feel? It was scary at first. Um, I never, like I say, I never planned that to happen. It was literally asking somebody who worked at the FA, do you think I can do that? Because the FA Council had been this sort of enigma in some ways of, it's full of men who are, white men in their 60s, 70s, some in their 80s. And that's the FA Council. So for someone like me, it was a sort of genuinely questioning, like, is that something that's for me? Not that I wouldn't be able to do the job, but just like is that the environment I want to be in? do you think I can make a difference there when that's the makeup of the council? And kudos to that person that said what they said. They say, why not? And I think that gave me the encouragement. And this is the thing, you need sometimes someone to just give you that little nudge to say, like, why not just do it and see what happens? So I had that happen for me, thankfully, there. And yeah, so in that sense, it was a bit scary at first. It's the unknown. It's an environment that I've never been in. Yes, I've done sports leadership through the Muslim Women's Sport Foundation at this stage. So this was around 2014. But it was the first time that I went through an election, for example. So I had to be voted, and I was up against two other people, and I had to be elected to represent those people on the council. In the end, it was a unanimous decision. Other than obviously the people voting for themselves, it was a unanimous decision in terms of everyone wanting me to go there and represent them. But I think it was it was an unknown. It was an opportunity for me to learn something new, and I, you know, I'd never experienced sports governance in that way. So it gave me the opportunity to learn new skills, to learn what it takes to run sport, what it involves, to demystify things. But again, have the impact that I wanted to have in a space that was even more important than I'd been in previously, I guess, or more impactful rather than important, I would say. So yeah, it was scary at first, but I think I found my way quite quickly. And I genuinely believe that people saw that I wasn't there for myself. This wasn't about the perks that you get with being on the FA Council. This was about, I'm here to represent people. I'm here to make a difference. And I hope in my 7 odd years there, I was able to do that.
And what impact did you want to have when you went into that?
I guess many things. There are different layers to that impact. Some of it is to do with the representation of diverse communities into that space. So when I first joined the FA Council, I was say roughly there were about 100 people on the council, because there's representatives from across. It's kind of like a parliament of football. I think that's what they were calling themselves at the time, but it's sort of representatives from across the country, different constituencies of football in England. And I was one of 4 women in that whole council when I joined. One of 3 people who were not white. So there was a guy, and then me and another woman. And as you've said, the first Muslim woman, the first Asian woman to be on that council, as far as I'm aware. And also, I think more importantly than all of that, I was less than half the average age. So you take the average age, half, I was less than that, the youngest ever at that point. But I didn't want that to be the case going forward. So these were the things in terms of representation across that council, in terms of representation into decision making. It was so important for me to, when I leave, to have the council in a better place. And we've done that, not just me, but everyone who's helped make that happen, to make sure that the FA Council is more diverse, that it has representation from across football, all backgrounds, all ages, all faiths, and so on. And that's, that was the impact for the council itself, in terms of ensuring that the decisions that are made in sport, in football in particular, in this case, are representative of the communities that actually play the sport. And I'll give you an example for why that was important for me. In 2007, FIFA, the international governing body for football, in their wisdom, decided to ban the hijab in football, the headscarf that Muslim women wear. I won't go into the story behind how that happened, but essentially it took 7 years to overturn that ban, from campaigning myself to others. And this is how I met other Muslim women across the globe, actually, that were doing the same thing. There's a woman called Asma in Australia. There were others in Canada, Shireen, who was really, from a raising awareness, trying to do something about it. And then we had certain individuals like Prince Ali, who was a vice president at FIFA, Moya Dodd in Australia, who was involved with FIFA as well, that enabled all of that change to happen. Together, we were able to make that change happen where they overturned the ban. And those kind of decisions are made partly because of people who have discriminatory views, because that was definitely the case in this particular example, but also because they don't understand one, what football means to Muslim women, and then two, the realities of wearing a hijab whilst you're playing football. So that's why these are the sort of situations where you kind of think that was 7 years lost of progress for Muslim women in football at the top level. Obviously, we were still playing sports and football at the grassroots level where people were allowing us to play, because but at any point in time, a referee, if you were playing in a match, a referee could turn around and say, you're not allowed to wear that. And you'd have to choose between your faith and playing football, and you shouldn't be in that sort of position ever. So that was the kind of stuff, that sort of stuff should not be happening. We should have strong enough leaders in the home country FAs, like England, as well as the international football associations, that can challenge people that say things like that say that it's okay to exclude people from that sport. So it was really important for me that representation happens. On the other hand, there was the more broader sports governance leadership space, which was really about making sure that the FA is fit for purpose at that time as well as for the future, fit for the future. And I really believe at that stage when I joined the FA Council, there was a lot of change that needed to happen. And in the 7 years that I was there, massive changes did happen in terms of how the sport is governed and who governs it. But also enabling, staff at the FA to really thrive and be able to provide the things that younger people in football are looking for, as well as, every other age range that there might be. So yeah, there's a lot of change that came, a lot of impact that came. Some was in the space of representation, others was just more broadly leadership of a sport, to take it into the next stage, to take it into the next kind of 10, 15, 20 years. And I hope I played a part in that.
Fantastic. Did you ever feel pressure to adapt or water yourself down to fit into those spaces?
No, I personally didn't. Overall, I would say no, because I felt quite comfortable being myself in every situation. Now, did that mean that everything was fine and just ran smoothly? No, that meant that I dealt with a lot of stuff. In terms of maybe not directly to my face, but other things that might happen between the spaces that I was in. So I know that I faced difficulties because I was myself. I wouldn't do it any other way. I always have this thing in life in general, but I definitely had it there because it's very easy to be drawn in to, I'm an FA council member, or I'm a sports leader, or I'm this position or that title. But I always wanted to be able to look at myself in the mirror every single day and say, I'm still Rimla. I'm me, and that's it. And I'm grounded. And trust me, my brothers and my family keep me grounded. So I always wanted to be able to look in the mirror and at myself and be proud of what I saw in the reflection. And I think that's what really helped me to not shift or change who I am. And I was in every boardroom, every meeting room, every interaction in between. Is there an element of needing to put in a bit more effort and work? People don't believe me, but I am an introvert actually at the core of who I am. And so it's not natural for me to go around and sort of schmooze and mix with people and network and all that kind of stuff. I'm that person that walks into a room, and if I don't know anyone, I'll just sort of hide in the corner and wait for someone to come to me. Or if I do know one person in the room, I will run to that person and be, just hold on to them, and then that opens things up for me. So it's not a natural thing for me to be in these spaces when you're trying to get to know another 100 people that are on the FA Council. But so yeah, there was an element of kind of having to go out of my comfort zone and push myself and do things that I wouldn't do normally. But I was still able to stay true to who I am and not water down who I was, to speak truth when it needed to be spoken. I definitely learned, I was very, 20 plus years ago, I was very direct. So I just say it as it is because that's how I would like to receive it. But recognizing that that's not how everyone else would like to receive, feedback. So I definitely learned and shifted how I spoke, being more compassionate and understanding of how different people work. I learned a lot of that, but never watering myself down, I don't think.
You've spoken quite a bit about being conscious of representing people, particularly those not in the room. How do you balance that responsibility while being yourself, as you describe?
I think if I look back at my time in the sports world in particular, like I say, I was following my passions, and so it wasn't a burden that I felt that I was carrying. It was more probably further down the line, maybe 10 or 15 years into the work in sports, that I started to feel like, okay, Rimla, you need to recognize that you are doing something here that people are noticing and it makes a difference in their lives. But like I say, if you are someone who recognizes that you only have to be yourself, and like I say, that that's good enough, in fact, it's more than good enough, then you don't feel the burden so much of being a representative, or of people looking up to you, or people looking at you to see how you react to certain situations, or what are you actually doing. I think it all comes back down to that core stability inside of yourself, and everything flows from that. There was nothing in particular that I look back at now and I say, well, if I'd recognize that I'm a representative of Muslim women here, or Muslim women are looking at me, or other people are looking at me as a Muslim woman, there's nothing I'd look back at and go, oh, I would have done that differently. I think if you are yourself, that's all you can expect of yourself. And if people choose to look up to you, if people choose to put you in a box as well, to say you are Muslim woman, and that's how all Muslim women are, that's down to them as individuals. But if you get your core values, your purpose, your intention right, and you just be the best that you can be, I just think you don't need to ask anything more of yourself. There's no need to put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, another great message. um, you've worked across both community spaces and major institutions. What have you learned about how real change can happen?
I think the real message I would have in terms of this is it comes down to people, us as humans. You'll have systems and processes and governance mechanisms and all this kind of stuff in leadership, which are clearly really important, and they're there for a reason. But at the end of the day, it comes down to relationships. That's the biggest things I've learned. I think when I went into sport, I thought, this is the right thing. So this thing here, this pathway here is the right thing to get from A to B. This is the best way to get there. It's the best thing to do. It's the right thing to do. So why aren't we doing it? And oftentimes I would come up against hurdles and think, but I can see this pathway is the right pathway. Why are we not following it? And I'd get frustrated. But that frustration was coming out of, because you need to take people on that journey with you. So relationships are key. So as I say, relationships are key to making change happen. Even if you think something's going to be the right thing to do, it doesn't get done until those relationships are built and people trust one another to know that together they're making the right decision.
Yeah, I always think people make change happen. Systems don't
Absolutely.
make. Systems definitely
Absolutely.
don't.
Yeah, yeah,
And as a sports person,
yeah.
tactics are a
Yeah,
major thing, aren't
yeah,
they? And
yeah.
I sense that you're someone that can look quite far ahead and want to get there, but having to take those people with you. Is there anything you want to say to our listeners around tactics and how you approach those sorts of things?
Um, I mean, I can say that, taking people on the journey with you isn't just I'm spending time with you and I'm going to speak with you, Joe, today and say, that's it, we now get one another, we can do everything together. You have to help people see things the way that they need to see them. So if you take every single lioness, right, in that England team, every single one of them will have a specific plan that is for them. That will be in relation to their food, their exercise programs, their lifestyle outside of the sports aspects of things, who they are as a person, what is their personality, what is their character, what do they love, what do they hate. Every single one of them will have a plan that Serena Wiegman will look at as the head coach of that team, and say, how do I deal with a Lucy Bronze? You know, back in the day when I was watching the game, when I was a lot younger, the Laura Bassett's or, the Karen Carneys or the Alex Scotts, etc. Every single one of them, the manager would look at and say, how do I manage this individual and make sure that together everyone's bringing the best that they can bring so that we win those tournaments at the end of the day? And I think that's really important. So getting to know people, to get to know what they really value, what they're trying to achieve as an individual as well, because everyone will have an idea of what impact they want to have when they're in a role or what they want to achieve. When you understand that and you find your people, you find the people that get that, the people that have similar intentions, and you can understand even the ones who might have different intentions, but you can understand what will give them a sense of satisfaction or a sense of I've made a difference. It's really important to understand those things to then be able to play something out in terms of how we're going to get to the end goal that we want to get to. So when we talk about tactics, I talk about our own team and our own people rather than necessarily worrying about the opposition. I mean, yes, you need to understand them as well, but the first and foremost is your own team and understanding your own players, the teammates that you have around yourself, to be able to understand what makes everyone tick, what's going to bring out the best in those individuals. And that's part of being a leader, I think. So yeah, it's a lot of work, even in a governance space, being a leader. And these are the things, like I say, I learned. I learned that not everyone sees things the way that I see things, and it's a very simple thing to say, but it's an important lesson in life, to then be able to apply and to have the impact that you want to have.
Yeah, fantastic. So, what would you say to someone who feels like they don't fit into the spaces they're stepping into?
It's a big question. I can only speak from my own experience. And like I say, looking back, I would say go for it, go for whatever it is that you want to go for. And be open to the fact that you don't have to be perfect in that situation. Just be yourself, be the best that you can be. Like I say, be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I did the best that I could with what I knew. Because you'll make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've still been able to look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, Rimla, you did that not as great as you could have, but next time we'll go again and we'll be better. So it's a bit of a sports person thing to do, isn't it? Talk to yourself in third person. But it's one of those things, look in the mirror and say, I can do this, and I can be better because I'm not meant to be perfect. And I think I would always say my message to anyone, having an intention to progress your own career or to get into a career or to be in a leadership position or whatever it is, there's nothing wrong with that, having that intention for yourself. But I would always have an intention that is also for the wider community, because trust me, that will also give you a huge amount of joy as well.
Yeah, I can see your face lights up when it's about something outside of you.
Yeah.
Interesting. What would you tell your younger self at the start of the amazing journey you've been on?
Enjoy it more. I think I was so focused on getting things done and trying to do things for other people, that I probably didn't stop enough to say, Gosh, Rimla, wow, that's incredible what you've managed to do there. I mean, obviously, as part of a wider team, but the effort that you put in as a person individually, enjoy that, enjoy the good moments, celebrate more. I would definitely say that to my younger self.
Yeah, fantastic. What gives you hope for the future of inclusion in sport?
What gives me hope is the people who are involved in sport. I look at the incredible journey that women's sport as a whole has been on in the last decade, just the last decade, probably even just the last 5 years, to be honest. And I just see the incredible people that are involved in driving that. And that gives me a huge amount of hope. I hope that these individuals who are now involved with sports leadership in particular, both nationally and internationally, will also look beyond themselves and what they understand as an individual themselves. So right now we have this sort of way of looking at inclusion that's sort of in silos. So it's someone who's from the LGBT community, or someone who's male versus female, or it's faith, or it's race, ethnicity, etc. And that they're sort of in silos. But what I really hope is that whoever is in whatever position that they're in, or whatever they're aiming to achieve, that they think about the whole. And I have real faith and hope in people that go in there with good intentions. Like I say, I have a huge hope and faith in humanity, and our ability to be really good with one another, despite what goes on more broadly. And I hope that that gets carried into sports leadership positions as well, that we think about everyone and everything and not just material things.
Yeah, we've got so much more in common than what divides us, haven't
Yeah,
we? If we allow ourselves to open up to that, and
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And sport is such a great way of bringing people together. People that are fans of the same team that might totally different political persuasions, but they're fans of the same team and they can come together on that, for example. People that are in conflicted areas that come together through sport, and understand one another through sport. Because when you take away all the differences, there's so much in common. And I believe sport, I mean, Nelson Mandela says it, right? It's an overused quote, but it's an amazing quote, so I can understand why. But Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to change the world. And I truly believe that. I think you can't say that enough.
yeah, me too, for sure. Rimla, it's been an absolute pleasure. I knew you were an inspirational woman when we met instantly, and I've learned so much more about you today. And you're having such impact, and you should definitely celebrate that and keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to Against the Tide, brought to you by Joe Metcalf and Louise Kavanagh. We're grateful to the team at Sticks and Glass in Leeds and Bison Studios in London, our inspiring guests and wonderful listeners. Subscribe to Against the Tide wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.